Are there any petitions? There are no petitions. Are there any papers? There are no papers. Are there any select committee reports?
Reports of the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Committee on the briefing on Cambodia's War Crimes Tribunal and on the petition of Murray Morris Story.
The report on Cambodia's War Crimes Tribunal is set down for consideration. Are there any bills for introduction? There are no bills for introduction. The House then comes to questions for oral answer, and the first question stands in the name of the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. Does he stand by his statement on Television 3 yesterday that, quote, we may just muddle through, end quote, the current economic situation?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I stand by my full statement, which was in response to a question about a global double-dip recession, and is as follows. Quote, you can't rule it out, but I think the general feeling from Bill is that while the atmosphere and the mood is very dark in the United States and in Europe, we may just muddle through, and I know a number of the major economic commentators don't think there will be a double-dip recession. But what we are in for is a period of volatility, I suspect extreme volatility in certain parts of Europe.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, a supplementary question, Mr. Speaker. When he also said yesterday, quote, unemployment is starting to fall, not too bad, end quote, had he read the latest national employment indicator for July, which shows that nearly 5,000 jobs were lost in New Zealand in that 1 month alone?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, no. Can I tell the member, because I'll assume he doesn't know this and that's why he's giving the wrong information. The National Economic Indicator is not a full indicator of all jobs in the economy. No. So, actually, we're not changing. The consistent position we've always taken, and the government, the member took when he was in government, is the Household Labour Force Survey. And the number of people employed in New Zealand now is higher than ever before in New Zealand's history. We have not lost jobs in this country, we've created jobs.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister also think that it's not too bad that under his watch the Ministry of Social Development figures show that the number of 18 to 24-year-olds on the unemployment benefit for more than a year have risen by 733%. Not too bad?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as always with the member, I would need to check his stats because they're almost always
Point
wrong.
of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Speaker, it is a tradition, and I think a repeated Speaker's rulings, that people take members' word in this House. That was a very clear quote. It was a very clear indication from the Leader of the Opposition, and, Sir, the Prime Minister was clearly not doing that.
I hear the member's point, and he's quite correct that members should take other members' word. The dilemma during question time, of course, is quotes that may or may not be in context, figures that may or may not be in context, and that's why I can understand sometimes ministers challenge figures, but perhaps they can be challenged in a less objectionable way. If the Prime Minister disagrees with the figures, then the language used in disagreeing perhaps wasn't helpful. Point of order, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, maybe I can help. I seek leave of the House to table a set of figures compiled from, I think, about 7 or 8 parliamentary questions that demonstrate just what I asserted to the Prime Minister.
Could the House be told the source who compiled it?
The source is parliamentary questions 6058, 6059.
Who compiled the...
Oh, it's compiled by my office from these parliamentary questions. I can read them all out.
No,
these are the answers given by ministers.
All members need to know is... Now, we don't have a practice of tabling answers to written questions because they are available to all members. And that's we shouldn't be wasting time on that. Now, in fairness in this whole issue, a question had been asked, It was interrupted with a point of order, and I'll now ask the Right Honourable Prime Minister to answer the question, not using the provocative language that he did, even if he does disagree with the figures.
Mr. Speaker, all I can say is I can't confirm the figures, and when one is in my job, then one learns very quickly, not to necessarily accept statements that are made, because the Labor Party yesterday said 47,000 fewer people had jobs in New Zealand. Not true. The Household Labour Force survey shows that employment is higher in New Zealand than it's ever been before. The number's 2.215 million New Zealanders employment, higher than 2.210 million back in December 2008.
Order. I think we've heard sufficient, because the question was actually related to social welfare figures, but I think we've heard sufficient on that. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Supplementary question, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, point of order.
Point of order, the Honourable.
I've just received an interjection from the House suggesting that I didn't get it right. I have offered to table the statistics, the answers from ministers to show that I did.
Order, the House will settle down. Order. Look, there's no need to be too thin-skinned today, and I believe the House, I just asked the House actually today to show a little respect to this place. A New Zealander lost his life this morning. We don't make New Zealanders proud of us if we behave like a bunch of school kids. And I just ask members to be mindful of that today. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition to ask a supplementary question.
Mr. Speaker, supplementary. Does the Prime Minister also think that it's not too bad when he looks at the Statistic New Zealand's latest figures showing that nearly 100,000 New Zealanders have left permanently or long-term to Australia under his watch, when on the same basis of the same problem of immigration to Australia, he demanded a vote of no confidence in Helen Clark when the departure figures were much, much lower?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, well, firstly, the member forgets the number of New Zealanders who have come back in that time, which again is a fault in his logic. Secondly, it's not true to say it was less. Over the period of the Labor government, about 300,000 New Zealanders left for Australia. Mr. Speaker, if I go back to my overall point, actually, let me quote actually from BNZ as one example on the overall economy, where they go, in relation to GDP data, we prefer to interpret today's figures as confirming that activity is growing.
Order. This is question time, where questions are answered. The Right Honourable Prime Minister might wish to make a point, but he's got to wait till the question asks about that point. The Honourable Jim Anderson.
Mr. Speaker, has the Prime Minister received, as Prime Minister, any reports of billboards appearing around New Zealand claiming that he as PM is, quote, building a brighter future, end quote, and will he be replacing that slogan with the words, quote, we may just muddle through, end quote?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think the world may muddle through a global recession, but one isn't sure. In terms of building a brighter future, let me, for the edification of the member, give him this. That is a graph from the Treasury, made up by someone, but from the Treasury. This is a sign of GDP growth around the world. This is Australia. This is New Zealand, above pretty much every country in the world. So on the backdrop of a global financial crisis, 3 major earthquakes in Christchurch, a more significant event has not occurred as a percentage of GDP in any natural disaster in New Zealand, in the world, should I say. New Zealand has grown faster than the United States since this government's been in office, faster than the Eurozone since this government's been in office, faster than the UK since this government's been in office, faster than Japan since this government's in office. Mr. Speaker, relative to pretty much everyone else, it is a brighter future.
Before I call the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, I just remind members that visual aids can be used by members to support their speeches, not to flash around the House willy-nilly, and the senior member should know that. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Order. I've called the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Supplementary question. When Statistics New Zealand shows that in recent months we have seen the highest ever emigration from New Zealand permanently to Australia, why doesn't he accept his own advice that he gave to Helen Clark that he should resign?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Because, Mr Speaker, a reasonable portion of those people have left Christchurch.
The Honourable John Boscawen. Order. I've called. Order. The Honourable John Boscawen deserves to be heard. Supplementary question, the Honourable John Boscawen.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Supplementary to the Prime Minister. When he told the House just a few minutes ago, quote, "We have not lost jobs, we have created jobs," was he aware of a recent Department of Labour report which showed that unemployment amongst 16 and 17-year-olds was about 4,000 higher than it otherwise might have been as a consequence of, one, the Labour Party legislating to cut out youth rates, and secondly, the National Party refusing to support Roger Douglas's private member's bill to reinstate them?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, I'm aware of the Department of Labour report, and I'm prepared to accept that that is one factor, but I think there are a number of factors taking place. And I go back to the member and say, that's right, recessions have a disproportionate effect typically on lower income people and young people. But the good news for New Zealand is that employment in this country has never, ever been higher. Never, ever been higher.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Supplementary question. Has he actually looked at the National Employment Indicator figures from the Department of Statistics, Statistics New Zealand, which shows in fact that the latest figures, July, the number of filled jobs is 46,710 fewer than was the case in October 2008. Will he examine his figures again, or will he at least look at these figures?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, the member can, if he wants to, look at a subset of employment in New Zealand, but if he wants to look at the if he wants to look at a subset of employment in New Zealand, he's welcome to. But if he wants to look at the overall economy, then I go back to the member and say the Household Labour Force Survey shows there are more people in employment in New Zealand than ever in New Zealand's history.
Is there a supplementary question? Point of order, the Honourable Paula Bennett.
Mr Speaker, I seek to release a report that was put out today from Jobs Online, which shows the number of job vacancies advertised online in both Seek and Trade Me increased by 6.3% for August 2011.
I'll hear point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
I just wanted to check that the Minister's not trying to fool us and to table something that she's already is already on a website, unless, of course, it's like Mr Heatley, who has taken embarrassing figures off the website today.
Order. The member will resume his seat. Now, the member was using a point of order to score a political point, and I don't think that's very appropriate. But if the material the member is seeking to have, I presume she was seeking leave to have it tabled, is on the website. We don't do that because it's available to all members. Can I check with the Minister, is it available on the website?
Mr Speaker, it may be available on a website. I've actually just got a printed report. Well, I don't know.
Order. A point of order is being... I want to make certain for the House, because I don't want to breach our conventions because a Minister is seeking leave to table a document. Is this Jobs Online not a government agency? It's not a government agency. Leave is sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There is no objection. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr Speaker, why doesn't the Prime Minister just acknowledge that in the real world people are struggling to find jobs, when we read today that when they've opened a New World supermarket in Kaiapoi, 870 people, sir, applied